Hello, everyone. How's everybody doing today? Hope you're doing better than me. I had a gravity sounds. Hopefully, you can hear me. Anyways, I had a little vein that ripped on my right arm. Uh, Started bleeding internally a little bit. Then it, I guess, went to see the doctor. Said it's no biggie. It'll seal off by itself. It's like I did my own operation. It's just ripped. So I hope, yeah, I do really hope that you're doing a little better than me, at least from your health point of view. Okay. Okay, we got an interesting day today. We're going to talk a little bit about gravity. So if you're not interested in gravity, well, all I can do is tell you to stay and listen. Okay. So let me recap just what we did last week, just so we have an introduction here. Okay. And what was the issue? The issue was that I was branded an agent of the U.S. government, of the intelligence agency, simply because I have some past association with them. And yeah, I can tell you one thing first. You can call me a conspiracist in politics and history. As I showed last week, I do hold a lot of events that happen, especially in the United States, to be conspiracies. Okay, among them Lincoln's assassination, JFK, 9/11, Assange, and this bozo Ed Snowden, all government operations. So I have no problem with that. Um, in math phys, you can call me a crank or a crackpot. That's the word that's used for dissidents, people who don't agree. Okay, that's fine. But you can't call me a conspiracist in the scientific arena in math phys. I have no problem with NASA uh, sending men to the moon. Um, I think there is something called space out there, a nothing called space. Um, what else? I do think there are satellites out there. I have no problem with NASA. Why? Because they've been at it for 60 years. That's different than JFK's death, which took a few seconds. 9/11, how long did that take? A couple hours. So you can't go back and repeat the experiment, right? In the case of NASA sending rockets to the moon, sending rockets to space, putting satellites on space, having intercontinental ballistic missiles, that sort of thing. If you don't believe in that, you're in the wrong century. What can I say? Okay, so you can call me a conspiracist in science and math, phys, whatever, but you can't call me a conspirator in mathematical physics concerning NASA, CERN, or any of that. Okay, and then yeah, it can't be on the one hand intelligence agent working for the U.S. agency and arguing in favor of conspiracy theories. I would probably lead you to believe the opposite. Okay. And then the other thing is that, like I write there, if U.S. intelligence agencies supported me, like they support Assange and Snowden, I would be on the news every day like they are. And that's one way you can tell when the U.S. government is, doing a job on you. The other one is I would also have a much higher number of hits in my YouTube site. I don't think I'm the most popular dissident out there. The other thing here is the issue of dissidence, because uh, some people have wrote here, and I'm going to go over their comments, that they think I'm a relativist or defend in some way, the establishment. Absolutely not. Here we fight against everyone. Dissidents, mainstreamers, flatlanders, all of them. And what's the difference? Why are we against all of them? All people on Earth, all humans on Earth, except this site, are particle theorists. They're all particle theorists. Even wave theorists are particle theorists. Mathematical physicists are particle theorists. Etherists are particle theorists. Flat earthers, flatlanders, plane earthers, whatever they want to call themselves. They're all particle theorists. They all do particles. We've been doing particles for 10,000 years. This is the only site that does not do particles. What's the difference? The particle theorists, 99.9999, bunch of nines there, people on Earth, they cannot explain the force of pull. They cannot explain the force of pull with particles. And they have to go in a roundabout way, and they say, well, the thing is being pushed from behind. We take the particles from in front. They do Lesage mechanisms or Casimir mechanisms. They go through all or the particles coming from the future in the case of mainstream. They have to do all these roundabout ways to produce the force of pull. Why? Because they look at the night sky, and they say, well, the sun seems like a discrete object. The moon seems like a discrete object. Mars looks like a discrete object. If you got enough telescopes, you can even see farther behind, out there. You can maybe see Neptune and Uranus, and they're discrete objects. No, they are not. They are not discrete objects. All atoms in the universe are physically interconnected. That's what this site is all about. This is what's different from all the rest. So don't call me a relativist. It means you just did a hit and run. You came in here, you didn't even know what this site is about, and you badmouthed me without reason. I'm going to cry. Okay, so what was the main argument I had against the flat earthers last week? Well, here they are. First one is 99% of flat earth arguments are conspiracy theories. That's politics, that's not science. Specifically, they rail against NASA. They say NASA is just fooling us to get some funds. Essentially, that's the argument. Nonsense, absolute nonsense. A lot of them, I don't know if all of them, but a lot of them deny that there's something called outer space out there. They don't believe in outer space. What can I say about that? Well, here's a way they can prove it to themselves. See, they want proof, right? They want proof. Show me that there is outer space. Show me that man went to the moon. Show me that we sent satellites into space. Okay, I want proof too. I want evidence too from them, right? And they can get the evidence very easily. I mean, they've got all these organizations just about in every state, in many countries for sure. So they've got a little bit of money. I think they can pay themselves a trip to, Cape Kennedy in Florida, and they can take their telescope, and they can take their binoculars, they can take their cameras, right? They can do this. A lot of people can do it. In fact, I think they must have flat earthers in Florida as well, right? They can go there, and when there's a launch of a rocket into space, like here I'm going to show, right? Like this. Let's get this one on. Okay. You can see there are people there, they're watching, and this rocket goes into space. Now you say, well, I don't know if it goes into space. Well, it's up to you to tell me where that rocket went. I mean, you got your camera, you got your telescope. And these guys go out into space. That's what NASA tells you. You say, okay, they're lying to you. Fine, they're lying to you. Okay, tell me where it went. Can you give me a film showing that the rocket came back to Earth? Can you show me how it landed in the ocean? Where did that go? And, in the case of Apollo 11, the first one that went to the moon, this thing traveled, you got the guy narrating there, the guy from Houston, I guess, and he's saying that now it's at 72 kilometers. Now it's at 84 kilometers, and it's a constant video. Now you can say, yeah, it was done in Hollywood. Fine. That's what I'm saying. Take your camera, bring me some proof. Bring me some proof that the rocket came back to Earth, that it fell in the ocean. Okay? We want proof too. Okay? Anyways, that's one issue. They only have criticisms of the globular Earth. They are just naysayers. They're not yaysayers. They're always in the negative mode. If you look at what they do, not only do they do, conspiracies, but it's all negative. They just tell you why the Earth cannot be a globe, why it cannot be a sphere. They never tell you how or why it can be or it is a Pancake. Okay, so they should spend a lot more time on promoting what they propose, right? That their flat world, and not about criticizing the globe world. And see, and the reason there is, critic is not a scientist. Scientist is not the guy who criticizes. Scientist is the guy who produces a theory and can explain a phenomenon. Okay? And these people have it in reverse. They think it's a question of criticizing and say, oh, I'm a scientist. No, 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 you're not. You're not a scientist if you cannot tell me how this universe works. That's what we need from you. Forget all your criticism, forget all your rants against conspiracies, forget all of that completely, which is 99% of what you do. Now just go with it, with your stuff. How does this universe work? Tell me what light is, what magnetism is. I want to know how an atom works, if you believe in atoms. Okay, electricity, ionization, and gravity, especially gravity, right? Tell me how it works. Don't tell me how it doesn't work, okay? Um, and one of the issues is that, they accuse critics of raising strawmen. And one of the reasons for that, you got all these different groups. They're all flat earthers. They call themselves flat earthers, and they all have different theories of gravity, which is the main issue with flat earthers. Okay, so all they do is just at all times they just say, "Oh, you're raising a straw man." That's not my theory. It's like you got to chase for each one of these. So you got all these flatlanders. They have different theories of gravity. They should have a single theory. The establishment at least has one mathematical description, which is Newton here on Earth, because some people also confuse general relativity with the micro world of quantum mechanics. And general relativity is out there. You can't bring Einstein's field equations here on Earth. You don't have the amount of volume that you need in such a small space as you would have here on Earth. So you cannot explain why a pencil falls because of curved space. Some people don't realize that. They think, oh, general relativity, we can apply it everywhere. No, you cannot apply it here on Earth. General relativity only works out there in space, only for big objects, suns, stars, planets, that kind of thing. Okay, and again, they have no rational explanations for gravity, the flat earthers. And the only good thing I see about flat Earth, and I do see this as a very positive one, okay, is that it's a grassroots movement. I like that about that. And it's a grassroots movement of ignorant people, okay? In a way, that's good. And what's the issue? The issue is that they're getting involved. They're starting to question mathematical physics. And I can only use a little bit of an analogy. I can't quote him exactly. I don't know his exact words, but Abraham Lincoln, he said, if I could preserve the Union without freeing the slaves, I would do it. Because his primary goal, at least at the beginning of the war, was let's get back together. Let's forget about the blacks, right? And I'm going to use something similar. I'm going to say, if I can destroy mathematical physics in any way, shape, or form, and it was caused by the flat earthers, they took over, I'll celebrate with them. I'll celebrate with them. I think if the Catholics, if the Buddhists, if the flat earthers, if the etherists, anyone can destroy mathematical physics, I'm all for it. I think the biggest religion on earth today is mathematical physics. All this garbage we had for the last 100 years, space-time, black holes, dark matter, particles coming back through time, zero-dimensional particles, atoms that they cannot draw, and so on. All these equations that they turn into physical objects, all these concepts that they turn into physical objects. If we can destroy all of that, I'd be the happiest guy on earth. Especially if we can destroy the religion of atheism. Atheism is the religion of mathematical physics. Why? Because they believe that everything needs to be proven, that you need to run an experiment, you need to do some predictions, all this nonsense that mathematical physics has created. In science, we don't do any of that. That's what happens before the conference. You can do anything you want before the conference. You can run an experiment if you want, fine, go ahead. Certify for yourself, verify, collect data, observe, make predictions, do all that stuff before the conference. After the conference, you can go out there and twist arms. You can you can convert people. You can try to persuade. You can try to recruit. You form a club. You try to convince people. You know, that kind of thing. That's after the conference. Science is what we do at the conference only. Only at the conference. And that is, we explain objectively a mechanism so that someone understands it. As soon as he finishes, we're done. We close the doors, we're done. Now you can go home and think whatever you want. Have any opinion you want about it. At the conference, we do only one thing, that's explain objectively. That's not what mathematical physics does. And that's why we ended up with atheism as opposed to theism. But we changed one religion for another. Okay, let's keep going here. Here is why you might say, why am I harping on flat earthers? Well, it's a rising movement. You can see that these guys have conferences. It's getting to be popular. It really is expanding. Okay, and again, if it expands at the cost of mathematical physics, oh, I'm all for it. Okay, so all these guys are getting together everywhere. I think they're all ignorant people, and that's fine. I don't care about that. But I'm glad that they're challenging the establishment. That I do like, absolutely love. Okay. Okay. Let's see. Let's go with the next subject here. Okay. I have some comments from people, flat earthers primarily. Okay. And they did put some comments in my area, in my site, and they attacked me, and so I want to mention some of these comments. I want to address them, and some of them are very interesting. Okay, here's the first guy. He wrote quite a bit. He says, "Flat Earth and gravity. Why don't things fall up? You still believe gravity is a force, and it is not." Okay, so what is it? Well, he suggests the Venturi effect. Okay, among other things, and I'll go through his case here, but let's find out first what a Venturi effect is for those who are not familiar with this. Here you get a picture of what it is. You got a flow of something and pulls water. That brown part in the tank, that's water. It's being pulled up simply by the rush of something along the pipe. Okay. Here's another version of that, maybe a little clearer. Let's see if I can find it. Where is it? Here. Okay, and here you can see you rush some air through the top of a pipe, and if you run it faster, well, it tends to pull the water up. Okay, that's essentially, in a nutshell, all you need to know about the Venturi effect. So this is what he's proposing. He's proposing, this mechanism. Okay, he's saying that maybe the Venturi effect would explain gravity. Okay, which essentially is, he's not explaining anything. He says, go look for the Venturi effect and you'll find out what gravity is. It's like that. It's like nobody really explains and sits down and illustrates it or whatever. He says you are taught to think relativity is a thing. And again, he thinks that I'm a relativist for some reason. Okay. And, here we have my version of relativity. They think it's a little bowling ball that sits in a space-time, what they call space-time, a concept, and that the balls are all around. Okay, and I discussed that on JF's program. A two-body system might work, but the three-body system for sure doesn't. Okay, so you can't do this with three bodies, which is what relativity is suggesting. So, when you put them against the wall, they say, well, it was just an analogy. You're not supposed to take it literally. Okay, so yeah, I'm not a relativist. And then the other thing I need to mention about his comment is you need to explain the mechanism of gravity, right? And they say that's one question all astrophysicists hate because we know they can't answer it. Well, I agree with him that they can't answer it. I'm not they. And I will answer it. Not only do I answer it, but I will answer it today. Okay, so I will answer gravity today. Okay. So if you missed it in other sessions because you're a hidden runner, well, Now you'll get it today. Okay. What's another comment that was made? Well, this fellow says, he talks about direction, another issue that I'm very well interested regarding gravity. He says, what happens when you drop it? Okay, talking about an object that you drop, right? Nothing would happen. You need a mechanism. You need something that is moving to come into contact with it. Absolutely agreed. Totally agreed. Okay, that gives it weight. That gives it weight and direction. And this is the issue. The issue is direction. I'm going to be dealing with that today. Direction of gravity. What causes direction? And what I'm going to argue is that you can't do it with particles. That's the point. So anyone who does particles, which is almost 100% of humanity, you can't do gravity with particles. That's why no one has ever done or successfully explained gravity, because you simply cannot do it with particles. Okay, so the direction is going to be the issue there. Okay. What's the next comment? The next comment is, I think it's this one. Yeah. And this fella says, alternative theory for gravity is diamagnetism. Yeah. But the important thing is that he mentions, or a push-down force instead of a pull-down gravity force. Okay. So he's saying it's a push force. And again, it's because everybody who cannot explain pull has to go with a particle. Okay, so they go with a particle, they talk about push. All their mechanisms are based on push, pressure, whatever. In fact, I have another fellow here they recommended for me. So I looked him up. He's a colorful kind of guy. He's a little cuckoo, yeah, but he says the simplicity of motion, because there's faulty wiring in the brain of people, right? That's what he was referring to. That push and pull are two separate things. But no, any motion requires an applied pressure, 100% anything. So he talks about pressure again because he can't explain pull. That's the issue. So nobody addresses pull because nobody thinks that Mother Nature does pull out there in her world. But here you have something without, not everything is pressure. Here you see it. Here's a bubble gum stuck to a steel plate, okay, to the surface, shiny surface. And you got the bubble gum, it's pulling on the plate. And so there is no pressure here. The pressure would, if anything, be from behind. So you would have to justify pressure here. Not to mention we can do the same thing with magnets. We can pull on a metal thing, right? And we do it without any pressure. I mean, you have to justify the pressure that there was something pushing on the piece of iron towards the magnet. And that's very difficult to do. And that's what we're going to show today. You simply cannot explain pull with particles. So anyone doing particles is the guy who's got a serious mental problem. Because after 10,000 years, if you haven't learned that you can't do pull with particles, then you haven't learned anything. You should visit a psychiatrist. Okay. Okay. Now here we have a couple theories. And they come from, I think this is the official site, because again, all these people keep saying, oh, that's not the official site, or it was taken over by the CIA, or who knows when. This is the official site, or the most popular site. It's the TFES, the Flat Earth Society. That's what that stands for, okay? And this is their main site. Okay, let's see how they explain gravity. Let's see if I can find it here. Okay, here's the TFES version of gravity. Okay, this is their mechanism. They say the Earth is constantly accelerating up at a rate of 32 feet, blah, 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 blah. Okay, constant acceleration causes gravity. Okay, so they say that the Earth is constantly accelerating upwards, being pushed by a universal accelerator, known as dark energy or the etheric wind. Okay. Okay, so it's clear. They're saying that what's causing gravity, or the notion that we have of gravity, is this, pushing up on the flat Earth and moving it upwards. This is the official version. Now, of course, there are all other people, and I'll go over those as well, but I just want you to know, this is the main site. As far as I'm concerned, this is the first one that shows up when you Google it. This is the one referenced into Wikipedia. Was it taken over by the CIA? Well, I can also argue that the CIA created it. How's that for a conspiracy theory? Okay, maybe the CIA created it. Maybe some people who are rich, who are Catholic or Protestant, religious people who believe like the fundamentals, who believe in a literal Bible. They might want to push an agenda and say, hey, let's push it through the flat Earth. I mean, I can argue anything, right? If you guys can argue that NASA is fooling you, I can argue also that this is a CIA operation and that you are a dupe. They're messing with your head. Okay, so we can all argue stuff as long as we don't have any proof or evidence for opinions. Yeah, we can argue anything. Okay, how does the TFES, the Flat Earth Society, do gravity? Well, they say it's an accelerating force, but then the question is, well, if this thing is accelerating, shouldn't it exceed the speed of light at some point? Which at least Einstein says it's the limit, the speed limit of the universe. And these people say one finds out that this equation shows an equation there, right? Tangent acceleration time divided by c, which is the velocity of light, can never exceed or equal 1. Never reach the speed of light. So they're saying that no matter how much you accelerate, you're just accelerating over your previous acceleration. It's always a fraction of it, and eventually you end up close to the speed of light, not even quite reaching the speed of light, but never exceeding the speed of light. There was an old Greek guy. His name was Zeno, and he had this theory. It's the Achilles and the tortoise theory. In other words, this says that Achilles can only go halfway to reach the turtle. Okay, and then every time he just goes halfway and halfway and halfway, he never reaches the turtle. And this is what these people are saying. These people are simply applying Zeno's paradox to light. You have to assume that the turtle in this case is the speed of light, and Achilles represents the speed of gravity. And what these people are saying, you accelerate, but you always do only about half as much the distance to light. That's more or less what they're saying in a roundabout way. We got a little bit of problem here because these people are simply trying to use something from relativity, which they criticize because they don't believe in relativity, special relativity especially, right? Speed of light, that kind of thing. But now they're taking the principle of relativity and they're going to apply it here. They say, oh, this is convenient. I'm going to steal this from relativity. I'm going to use it here. I don't believe in relativity, but I'm going to steal it and use it here, and they have this Zeno paradox kind of idea. Okay, so what should we do? This was the speed of light. Let's see. Yeah, so this is essentially what they're proposing, okay? As far as I'm concerned, they're saying that, the Earth is being pushed upwards by something they call dark energy or dark matter or whatever dark thing is underneath. It's always dark, you can't see it, you can't prove it, you can't even imagine it, but it's pushing it up. And, you're since the sun and the moon are above the Earth in the firmament, that's being pushed up as well. And so are all the stars that we see every day, Everything's being pushed up, and the question is, it's being pushed up from what? I mean, what are we running away from? Hell? Is that what's down there? I mean, I don't know. This is something they need to explain. What are we running away? It's easy to say, oh, we're just accelerating. And, the Newton's apple didn't come down onto his head. Newton came up towards the apple. Okay, so that's their version. Another area here, another Flat Earth Society, that's this one here. They seem to be a rival group. They have a different logo or a different page site, look, etc. Right? So these people have a different idea, and here's their. This is all you'll find in their site regarding gravity. I was hoping to see a mechanism or something. And no, and it's synthesizing that underlined line there. If not affected by gravity, it would travel a straight line. They're saying if you throw a ball, right, or whatever, if it weren't for gravity, it would continue in a straight line like Newton said. And, I like the fact that these people use Newton and all these other fellows whom they don't believe in, but they bring in pieces that they selectively pulled out of Principia or whatever, some article that Einstein wrote, and they bring it to justify their theories. But they don't have a theory for gravity, and that's all you'll find. So you don't find a theory of gravity per se. Uh, Probably the most popular one is the density theory. Okay, and here are three comments that I pulled out of the internet. It's about density. You have weight because you are denser than air, period. Okay, great. Gravity is not a force, and bodies fall because of their density higher than the air's one. Okay, and another fellow says if something is denser than the air around it, it will drop like a brick. Okay, if it is less dense, it will rise. Helium balloon. In water, it's called buoyancy. Okay, so now you know how gravity works according to these people. It's not a question of velocity or acceleration, it's a question of density. Um, what's the problem with that? Well, we took a hammer and a feather to the moon. Okay, here we have our dear astronaut, and he's going to drop them. Okay, and what he finds is that it's not moving. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, it's supposed to be moving, but it's not for some reason. It froze on me. Never seen that happen. Anyways, the astronaut dropped the feather and the hammer, and they both fell down at the same time. That's what I wanted to show. Okay, I don't know why that failed. It's a GIF, so I don't know why it failed. And these people say, well, humans never went to the moon, so that was done in Hollywood. Okay, it turns out that we did it here on Earth as well. And not a friend of mine, by the way, Brian Cox, a British mathematical physicist, and physicist with quotation, just a mathematician. He goes to the NASA Center in Cleveland, where they test vacuum, astronauts in a vacuum, that sort of thing. And what they did, they threw a feather and what was it in a ball, okay? And so they threw them at the same time in atmospheric pressure. And then they did the trick again after they pumped the system down. Okay, and here it is in a minute. Okay, here they fall down at the same time in a vacuum. Okay, they fall down exactly at the same time. We're talking about feathers here against the ball. Okay, and so you have this situation with atmospheric pressure. Okay, the ball falls down and the feathers fly around because it's air that's holding them up, which is the argument that the flat earthers make. But here, when we remove the air from the chamber, you can see they fall down. There's no resistance there, and now they both fall down at the same time. Okay, so you would think that the ball would still fall down faster because it's got higher density than the than the feather. Uh, it's like counterintuitive for us because we're used to seeing gravity every day. Things fall to the floor, etc. But when you remove the air, you get a difference between a balloon, that's floating there, right, and the hammer or the ball, whatever else you compare it against. And then there's the issue of shape also. If you're going to do it, especially with particles, like 100% of humanity does out there, they do it with particles. So they have this push mechanism. Well, you have an iron ball, just a little iron ball, and you drop it in the water, and it'll sink to the bottom of the ocean. And then you have these big ships, and they have again, they've got all this metal, the same density as the little ball there, essentially, not the same volume, but the same density, and it floats. So I don't know how density is going to help them. And, one thing that people should be aware of is that, I think I have it here. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, here, the moon would travel in a different, have a different gravity with respect to the Earth if it went around the poles than if it went around the equator. Okay, because the Earth is oblate. In other words, it's more like American football rather than like a basketball. Okay, and it's elongated, especially at the equator. So the center of the gravity would be different with respect to an object going around the poles and one going around the equator. Okay, so shape is important when you take into consideration gravity. Okay, and that together with the other arguments kind of rules out density. Okay, but let's make sure we bury density forever and for anyone who proposes particles. Okay, so all those people who propose particles, you better listen very carefully now because now I'm going to get to the real good stuff. Okay, so here it goes. Okay, let's see. Let me find it here. What is this? Oh, by the way, yeah, this for those who don't believe the NASA, here's a guy who did it at home with the feather and a piece of metal. Okay, and so he, without air, you can see that they both fall at the same time. Whereas with air, one floats. So you don't need to go to the moon. You don't need to believe in NASA. You can do it at home. Buy yourself a little vacuum chamber. Okay, here's the actual speed of how the thing fell. It goes real quick. Okay, that's the actual speed. And when you compare the actual speed versus, in an atmospheric pressure versus the one without air, well, you can see the difference there. Okay, one floats, the other one doesn't, and that's just by removing the air. Okay, so no, you don't need to believe that humans went to the moon and did the hammer and feather thing. This guy did it at home, and there are other. You can find them on the internet. You'll find more of these cases where, especially the universities, are doing these experiments to show, especially flat earthers, I guess, that this has to do more with gravity. And again, the big argument against that, the flat Earth argument, is that why doesn't it go up? I mean, if the Earth has nothing to do with it, if it's just air, well, the ball or whatever you're throwing, letting go, it should go upwards or sidewards or any other direction. And that's a very simple argument that just destroys the notion of density. Okay, it's not a question of density. Okay, so let's see what's wrong not only with the flat earthers, but anyone on planet Earth who proposes particles. Okay, so anyone who does particles for gravity or for anything, for magnetism, whatever, diamagnetic or whatever nonsense that is. Okay. The first thing is that it's an inconsistent, irrational mechanism of gravity. That's for the flat Earth. But anyone who proposes particles is going to be doing an irrational mechanism for sure. It has to go in a roundabout way to explain pull. Okay. I had something on that. Let me see. I got a little something for that. Oh no, well, okay. All I want to say in that regard is that the flat earthers, they have inconsistent theories. This is one site versus another site. One site says that it's accelerate. The Earth is accelerating. The other one says no, it's not. Okay, so you don't really know who to attack, and the big problem there is that you end up being accused of raising straw men. Okay, that was the issue there. Okay, but let's find out here. The question is whether the Earth is the center of the universe, because why would particles push humans down towards the center of the Earth from outside of the Earth? I mean, are these particles uniform? And why would they come from all sides at the same acceleration of 9 point? In other words, why would they accelerate us 9.8 meters per second square in China, in the U.S., in Russia, in South America, all over the Earth? Are we saying that all the particles are coming from every direction uniformly? Why would that be? Are we the center of the universe? So the particle theorist has a little bit of problem in explaining uniformity. Why the particles are compressing us towards the Earth, pushing us shoulder downwards towards our feet, right, from above. Why would that be the case? In order for that to be the case, you would have to have a uniform environment, all pushing on the Earth. Why can't more particles come from the right and fewer from the left? Why can't more come from the north and fewer from the south or any other direction? So one of the big problems is what this person, this individual mentioned earlier, the direction of gravity. Why does gravity have a direction? Okay, so that's one of the questions people have to answer, and they say, "Well, Bill, can you answer it?" Yeah, sure, I can, very easily. And here we have it, because gravity is a pull force. Okay, and here you can see why. If every atom of your body is connected to every atom on Earth, physically connected, because uh, all atoms are interconnected by what I call the electromagnetic rope, which is the medium through which light, the torsion known as light, propagates. And that same rope serves to, bind any two atoms. Then yes, as every atom on Earth is interconnected, every piece of matter that belongs to the Earth is interconnected. It doesn't matter if you're in China, it doesn't matter if you're in Russia, it doesn't matter if you're in the US or South America or Africa. You're going to be pulled towards the center of the Earth, because that's where all the ropes converge here on Earth. Okay? They go towards the center, to the gravitational center, which is not the exact center, but that's a trivial issue. The point here is that now you can see why we don't fall off the Earth, why when the Earth rotates we don't fly out, why the guy in China is pulled towards the center. And as you can see, we're all pulled towards the center. So you have direction there. You have an explanation for direction, something no particle theorist can tell you. Because you get this situation with particles as well. Here, let me illustrated this, if I can find it. Well, let's first justify that statement. Here you have Richard Muller. I want to make sure people have this in mind when they consider gravity, because now they know what they have to answer. And Richard Muller, he's a professor at UC Berkeley. Okay, so he says, for example, if you have you here, there's this big mass here, the Earth, right? And you have you with your little mass here. That's you. That's you sitting on top of the Earth, the big mass, and you're the little mass. Okay, that's what he's referring to. Every atom on Earth is pulling on every atom of you. You're also pulling on it. So that's an important point. Now, the second important point is the next one. The amazing thing about gravity is that it goes right through things. It goes right through the walls. Okay, you got to explain that. People don't understand gravity, and they say, "Oh, I know everything I need to know about gravity," and they don't know the basic things. The basic thing is that gravity goes through walls. Put that in your head. Gravity goes through walls. Okay, so here we have some illustrations of that. When the moon pulls, it pulls right through the wall, right through you, right through the basketball, right through the table, all the way to the center of the Earth. Okay? Gravity goes through walls. I know it hurts your feelings. I know it destroys your theory, especially if you're a particle guy who proposes particles. Gravity goes through walls. And we're going to see how difficult that is to answer with particles. Okay? Here's another version of that. Okay? Okay, you got to explain why one thing pulls on another right through the wall. How an atom pulls on another through a wall. So that's what you got to explain if you want a theory of gravity. Otherwise, you don't understand gravity. You have no idea what gravity is, because this is what you got to explain. This is the difficult task. Everybody says, "Oh, I know gravity like the palm of my hand," but see, this is what you got to answer. Okay? And yeah, not too many people can. In fact, I don't know anyone who can. And in 10,000 years, no one has answered gravity, because nobody can answer that question. Okay? Now here, I made a little illustration. You can see if you're doing it with particles, okay, you got to go right through the wall, through the atoms. But that's not the only problem. The problem is that if you have aligned atoms, and you'll see it in a second here, if the atoms are aligned, like the atoms on the wall that you'll see there, okay, I made 6 atoms there. If the atoms are on the same line, they pull right through each other. In other words, not only do you have to explain why the particles of gravity, which are the yellow ones, push on the first atom, and then it just continues down the road, on a linear path. But you have to explain also that gravity works in the opposite direction as well. You have Here, let me show you the opposite direction. Now the particles are going in the opposite direction. See, because the particles of whatever object is behind the ball is sending also particles right through you, right through the wall in the opposite direction towards the moon or to whatever's out there. So let's put them together, and because this is what you got to explain if you want to explain gravity. If you want to have a theory of gravity, these are the questions you got to explain. Here you have particles going in both directions, and you got to explain with those particles going in both directions how that produces attraction. If particles push, I mean, you can say, well, yeah, this guy pushes a human in the direction of the wall. And the question is, why doesn't the wall stop the particles from reaching the human? That's the question you got to answer. How is it that the particles go right through the atoms? Why? And if they go through the atoms, they're not pushing the atoms. So you can't have it both ways. You either push on the atoms or you go through them. If you go through them, you're not pulling on anything and you're not pushing for sure on the wall. Okay, and if the gravitational particles from behind the human here, where the ball is going right through you, if they're going right through the atoms, right, then they're not pushing you towards the wall. And if they're pushing you towards the wall, you're stopping those particles from reaching the wall. So you can't have it both ways, particle theorists. You got a problem with your particle nonsense because you're trying to have it both ways. Okay. So this is the issue. The issue is that anyone who has to explain gravity with particles has to explain these phenomena. How is that particle goes right through walls? Okay, this is the issue that people have to answer. Okay, and so here let me summarize the particle problem. For the last 10,000 years, the only proposal anybody has put on the table is particles. I don't care if you're a mainstreamer, you're a relativist, if you're a guy from quantum, I don't care if you're a flat earther, I don't care if you're a dissident from the John Chappell Society, the John Chapel Society as I call them. I don't care if you're an etherist, I don't care if you're a fanatic of Tesla or James Maxwell. You are a particle theorist. There's never been any other proposal other than particles. Ether is particles. Quantum is particles. General relativity is a particle theory, And what has happened, is that, and in this sense, the quantum guys, you can say, even the relativists, are one step ahead of everybody else in this sense, because anyone who proposes real particles, what everybody understands for the word particle, we're talking about traditional particles, Newtonian particles, real corpuscles, tiny balls, something that has volume, okay? That's what I'm talking about, okay? Anyone who proposes real particles should be kicked out of science. Because the quantum mechanics and the general relativists, at least they figured out that you can't do it with classical particles anymore. That's why they abandoned the particle, because they studied it for so long, they finally said, we give up, white flag, we surrender. Mother Nature won. We can't figure it out with real particles. And so first they introduced the particles to explain light, and they said the particle is really, a bundle of energy. And then in the 70s, they couldn't even explain it with a bundle of energy, light, let alone gravity. They have no explanation for gravity in quantum mechanics. And so what did they do? They started looking at extended objects, and they created the field. In other words, the field existed already, but that's when they gave it, a little bit of energy underneath. They threw gasoline on the fire, and the quantum field theory started taking root. Why? Because quantum field theory destroys quantum. That's why. But they keep calling it quantum, just like they call computers quantum computers. So people say, oh, quantum, because it's a quantum. No, quantum means that they're ignorant, that they don't know how it works. That's what quantum means. They're using all these effects like superposition and decoherence. Particle can be at two places at once. Uncertainty principle. It means they don't understand how the Mother Nature works at the micro level. Okay? They don't understand it. There's a lot of people who, from the official mainstream that say it. I don't take my word for it. You can find out, Susskind and Feynman and so on. So these people don't understand how the world works, and so they finally gave up on the real particles, on the traditional corpuscle. They gave up on that. All dissidents are still working on that. They still haven't gotten past that roadblock. They're still thinking of real particles. They're still thinking of little tiny balls. They're saying, "Oh no, you guys are wrong. You guys are doing all this esoteric stuff, this abstract part. We're going to do it with real particles." It's already done with. So anyone who proposes real particles, ether particles, that there are gazillions of particles out there in space, everywhere around space, he's got a mental problem. He should be institutionalized. Okay, there are no such things as real particles, and you cannot explain the phenomena that Mother Nature runs with real particles. That's why quantum had to get away from real particles and invent the quantum particle. The quantum particle started out as a bundle of energy, and now it's a field concept. What is a field concept? An extended thing. Okay, that's what field is supposed to get you to believe or to think, to visualize. You're supposed to think of a field as something extended all the way to the edges of space-time. Why? Because they could not explain it with discrete little things. And so in that sense, at least the quantum guys are a little ahead of all these ignorant dissidents who are still trying to do it with real particles, with corpuscles. And we get rid of all of them. We reject all of them. There are no such things as particles. Gravity is a pull force. It pulls. The reason you cannot explain pull is because everybody thinks everything out there is discrete. It's not. Okay? All atoms are interconnected, physically interconnected. Yeah? Physically interconnected by a rope that torques two twined threads and sends light in one direction, and you got the not the pull, it's called the drift of gravity. It just drifts towards something else. Anyways, let me give you a little experiment, okay, that you can use at home to prove to yourself that particles cannot be done. Here's the experiment, okay? Now, I know it's a $1 billion experiment. Not all of you can afford it with your yearly salaries. So just try to bear with me as much as you can. We have a ball, okay? We let go of it, okay? And it falls down, right? We know that, okay? Because the particles are pushing it, right? That's why it falls, okay? It falls because all these particles, all these ether particles, all these real corpuscles are bearing down upon it, okay? So let's isolate it, okay? Now we're gonna let go of it, and now it's, fortunately we got protection from particles, so the particles can't touch the ball. And I bet you'll find out the same thing I found out, that the ball falls anyways. It falls like if the plate weren't there. So yeah, always shield your particles. Always shield your ball or whatever you're gonna throw, right? Shield it and find out if particles are pushing it down. And if not, then the particles are going right through the plate. And they're going through the plate, you got two choices. If they're going through the plate, they're not touching the atoms. They're going right through the atoms. Okay? And because there's no difference with plate or with or without plate. So it's like if the plate weren't there, it's not like it's going through the interstices, through the holes between the atoms. No, it can't be because, if you put a very dense object like a metal plate or whatever, it'll fall anyway. The ball will fall anyways underneath it. Okay, so either gravity balls, ether balls, whatever balls you are thinking of, go through the atoms and push, or they get blocked and they don't push. You can't have it both ways. So again, people who propose particles have to visit a mental institution at this point. You are deranged. You are deluded. There are no such things as particles. Gravity is a pull force, and anyone proposing particles has after 10,000 years of failing with particles, is either extremely ignorant or simply it has a mental problem. With that, I will see you, I guess, when's the next time? Wednesday? We'll see you on Wednesday. Bye bye.